Final Fantasy, one of the most influential video game franchises in the world, has captivated players for decades with its intricate storytelling, groundbreaking gameplay, and unforgettable characters. With its origins in the early days of the gaming industry, the series has evolved into a cultural phenomenon that has left a lasting impact on gaming and entertainment as a whole. This article explores the origins, history, and evolution of the Final Fantasy franchise, examining how it became a cornerstone of the role-playing game genre and continues to shape the future of video games. The story of Final Fantasy begins in the mid-1980s, during a time when the video game industry was experiencing a rapid expansion in Japan and around the world. Square, a relatively small Japanese video game company at the time, was facing financial difficulties and was on the brink of bankruptcy. In 1986, Square's president, Hironobu Sakaguchi, was tasked with developing a game that would save the company from financial ruin. Sakaguchi, who was a relatively new game designer at the time, wanted to create something ambitious and groundbreaking that could help Square stand out in the crowded gaming market. This led to the creation of Final Fantasy. The name Final Fantasy itself was chosen because Sakaguchi saw the game as his last attempt to save the company. He felt that if the game failed, it would mark the end of Square's existence in the gaming industry. Little did he know, Final Fantasy would not only secure Square's future, but also become one of the most beloved and successful video game franchises of all time. Final Fantasy was released in December 1987 for the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES. The game was a turn-based role-playing game, RPG, that combined elements of fantasy, science fiction, and mythology. It introduced players to a richly detailed world filled with magic, legendary creatures, and a diverse cast of characters. The game's story revolved around a group of heroes, known as the Warriors of Light, who embarked on a quest to save the world by restoring the 4 elemental crystals that had been corrupted by darkness. While the gameplay of Final Fantasy was relatively simple by today's standards, it was revolutionary for its time. It introduced key RPG mechanics, such as random encounters, turn-based combat, and character progression through leveling up. It also featured an expansive world map, where players could travel between towns, dungeons, and other locations, as well as a deep narrative with multiple plot twists and character development. These elements would go on to become staples of the RPG genre and would influence countless games in the years to come. Despite its initial success in Japan, the game did not receive immediate attention in North America. However, its popularity grew over time, and the release of its sequels helped solidify the series' reputation as one of the most important RPG franchises in history. The game's success was pivotal in helping Square establish itself as a leading developer in the RPG market. In 1988, a year after the release of the original game, Square released a direct sequel, Final Fantasy II, for the NES. Unlike its predecessor, Final Fantasy II introduced a number of innovative changes to the gameplay mechanics, including a new system for character development based on experience points, rather than the traditional leveling up system used in the first game. This system allowed characters to grow in specific areas based on their actions during the game, creating a more personalized experience for each player. The game also featured a deeper, more complex narrative, with themes of rebellion, sacrifice, and redemption. Final Fantasy II was a critical success, but it was only released in Japan and did not reach North America until years later. In 1990, Square released Final Fantasy III, which further refined the gameplay mechanics of the series and introduced several new features, such as the job system. The job system allowed players to assign different roles, such as warriors, mages, and thieves to each character, adding an additional layer of strategy and customization to the gameplay. Final Fantasy III was another success for Square, but like Final Fantasy II, it was not initially released outside of Japan. It wasn't until 1994 that the franchise received its first truly global release with the launch of Final Fantasy IV, known as Final Fantasy II in North America, due to the previous lack of releases in the region. Final Fantasy IV was a major leap forward in terms of both gameplay and storytelling. The game introduced the Active Time Battle (ATB) system, which allowed for real-time combat during battles, creating a more dynamic and fast-paced experience. The game also featured a more mature narrative with complex characters and themes of loyalty, love, and redemption. Final Fantasy V, released in 1992, was another important entry in the series, introducing further refinements to the job system and enhancing the gameplay with new abilities and mechanics. However, it was Final Fantasy VI, released in 1994, that would become one of the most critically acclaimed and beloved entries in the franchise's history. Final Fantasy VI featured a sprawling narrative with multiple protagonists, each with their own unique backstory and motivations. The game explored themes of loss, rebellion, and the clash between good and evil, and its innovative use of an ensemble cast of characters set it apart from many other RPGs of the time. In 1997, Square released Final Fantasy VII for the Sony PlayStation. This game marked a turning point for the franchise, as it transitioned from 2D graphics to fully rendered 3D environments, utilizing the PlayStation's hardware capabilities to create a visually stunning world. Final Fantasy VII also introduced the Materia system, which allowed characters to customize their abilities and spells, further adding to the strategic depth of the gameplay. The game's story, which revolved around Cloud Strife's journey to stop the evil Shinra Corporation and the enigmatic villain Sephiroth, became one of the most iconic narratives in gaming history. Final Fantasy VII was a massive commercial and critical success, and it played a significant role in popularizing RPGs outside of Japan. Following the success of Final Fantasy VII, Square released Final Fantasy VIII in 1999 and Final Fantasy I in 2000. While both games received praise for their gameplay, story, and characters, they were met with a mixed reception from fans who had grown attached to the characters and world of Final Fantasy VII. Nevertheless, the franchise continued to grow, and in 2001, Square released Final Fantasy X for the PlayStation 2. This game introduced voice acting to the series and featured a more linear structure compared to previous entries. Final Fantasy X became the first game in the series to receive a direct sequel, Final Fantasy X2, which was released in 2003. In the years that followed, the franchise continued to evolve, introducing new titles and expanding the Final Fantasy universe. Final Fantasy I, released in 2002, was the series' first foray into the world of online multiplayer gaming, allowing players to connect with others in a persistent online world. Final Fantasy XII, released in 2006, took the series in a new direction with a more open-world design and real-time combat. Final Fantasy XIII, released in 2009, featured a highly linear gameplay experience, but introduced a new battle system and stunning visual design. The most recent major entry in the series, Final Fantasy XV, was released in 2016 after a long period of development and anticipation. Final Fantasy XV embraced an open-world structure and real-time combat, providing players with the freedom to explore the vast world of Eos while following the story of Noctis, a prince on a quest to reclaim his throne. The game received positive reviews for its beautiful world, dynamic combat, and emotional story, though it was also criticized for its linear sections and unfinished elements. Throughout its history, the Final Fantasy franchise has remained a hallmark of the RPG genre, continually pushing the boundaries of what is possible in video game storytelling and design. With its captivating narratives, memorable characters, and innovative gameplay, Final Fantasy has earned its place as one of the most influential and beloved video game franchises of all time. As the series continues to evolve and grow, it remains a symbol of the enduring power of video games as a medium for art, entertainment, and storytelling.